Would I be the antagonist if I ditch my boyfriend and his kids to go skiing? My, female 33, birthday is coming up next month and I love skiing. I have not been able to ski this year because of work. I work remotely, but I just started a new job, and it's very demanding. Last month my boyfriend, male 48, his kids, female 14 and female 16, and my son, male 14, all went skiing. Although I was unable to ski due to work, I stayed at the condo we had on the hill and made them every meal as it was ski in ski out. For my birthday I had asked if we could go skiing, and my boyfriend agreed and suggested a location they had been to before, but I had not. It was his girl's favorite. I did prefer elsewhere, but I happily agreed, as any skiing is better than none, and I want to make sure that everyone has a good time. I do have a strong relationship with his youngest, as she is just around more, but with his older daughter it is always positive from my end, though she does have a lack of respect for me. She likes me but doesn't respect me. I have felt in the past like my boyfriend could have stepped in at times when she was being over the line, as I would never have tolerated that type of behavior from my son, not just to a partner, but to any adult or human being for that matter. I do not discipline his children as I don't feel comfortable doing so, and I don't want to make waves. He asked his girls if they would like to come skiing for that weekend to the place that we had picked as they preferred it, and both don't want to. For this reason, we are not able to go on a ski trip at all. His relationship with his oldest is becoming strained, teenagers, and a contentious relationship with his ex doesn't help. In my opinion, I have not expressed this to him. His ex-wife and he are in almost a competition to be most liked. Because of this, the girls are not ever told no or held to account. I decided that I would book a ski trip for just myself and my son, and he can stay back with his girls. He was a little mad and seemed hurt that I would be going without him as he wanted to spend my birthday with me. I told him that he absolutely has the option to spend my birthday with me, and I'm more than happy for everyone to come. I feel like sometimes we don't always have to do what the kids want to do, and I spend the bulk of my time making sure that everyone is happy and taken care of, and their needs are all met before my own, as all parents do. For one weekend I want to do the things that I want to do, and I find it unfair that because they don't feel like it I can't. With zero bitterness or resentment, I am happy to go on a trip with my son. Would I be the asshole if I take the trip knowing he wants to spend my birthday with me? You invited everyone, so nobody is being ditched. You are not married and obviously have different responsibilities with your respective children. It's okay if someone is disappointed, but that's life. He had a decision to go or not to go, and as the adult he could have told his kids everyone is going, but he chose not to do this. Not your choice, but his. Seems he could even let his daughters stay with their mother for that weekend and still join you, but he chose not to do that. Go on your birthday trip and his response will tell you what your future looks like. Just because his kids don't want to go doesn't mean the whole trip needs to be canceled. Book the trip with you and your son, get in some bonding time and have a great birthday. You all can do something together when you get back. Am I the antagonist for calling out my sister at her birthday dinner and ruining the vibe? My female sibling Kim, who is 33 years old, had her birthday dinner 2 nights ago. There were about 12 people in attendance. Kim and I aren't close. She was the golden child and I was the scapegoat. Kim was always very cruel to me and got away with it because my mother never held her accountable. Kim had one too many drinks at dinner and began telling an incredibly traumatizing story from my childhood. Kim constantly tells this story as if it's goofy and lighthearted. The trauma from this situation impacts my daily life. When I was 9 and Kim was 12, we were at my neighbor Nate's house, who was 13. Nate had an old storage trunk in his room. Kim convinced me to get in the trunk. The trunk had a built-in lock that didn't work. Once I was inside, they closed the lid, and somehow, the lock on the trunk suddenly worked again. They tried for several minutes to get it open. At first, I thought they were just messing with me and pretending they couldn't open it. Once I realized they weren't joking, I began to panic. Nate refused to get his parents because he didn't want to get in trouble. He then began making jokes to scare me like, let's throw the trunk down the stairs to see if that opens it, and let's set it on fire and burn her out. After an hour of being trapped in there, he said, I'm not getting in trouble for this. I'm going to watch TV. He and Kim left the room to go watch TV. While I cried and panicked. They came back an hour later and tried opening the trunk again. My legs had gone numb and my whole body was aching. I had been crying for hours and told them I felt like I was running out of air. They discussed how they could get me out without getting trouble. Finally, after almost 3 hours of being stuck in there, he finally got his parents. His dad came running in with a crowbar and pried the lid open. His parents apologized to me profusely and grounded Nate. My parents did nothing to discipline Kim and told me I was being dramatic. That experience traumatized me, and to this day, I am severely claustrophobic. I can't even cuddle my fiancé because it's too constricting. Kim began telling the trunk story for the 1000th time, laughing throughout, as if it was an amusing childhood story. Without raising my voice, I cut her off and said, That's not a funny story, Kim. You're always telling this story like it's a cute tale from our youth. That was traumatizing. I have regular nightmares and flashbacks from that day. To this day, I have extreme claustrophobia. I could have died from suffocation. It's not like I was in there for 10 minutes, I was in there for almost 3 hours. Everyone got really quiet and just kind of awkwardly stared at their food. We sat in silence for the rest of the meal. It definitely killed the vibe. Kim and my mother sent me angry texts saying that I owed Kim an apology for making a scene and ruining her birthday. Every time she tells that story, it's like I'm in the trunk again. All the trauma comes flooding back. Am I the antagonist? Cut them off. You don't need that toxicity in your life. Stand strong and prioritize your mental health over toxic relationships. You deserve better, Aita. Am I the antagonist for not inviting my in-laws to my stepson's birthday party? My in-laws hate me to say the least. My husband has a 10-year-old from a previous marriage. My husband and I have one son together that turned 1 a few weeks ago. I typically wouldn't have celebrated his first birthday. I wanted a location so my in-laws could go along with my husband's sisters. His parents think our home is too small to accommodate them. No one from my husband's family called my husband to wish our son happy birthday. None of his family showed up for the party. My husband's mom is big on birthdays. She'll text my husband, "Don't forget to tell grandma, happy birthday," etc. I have a long history with his parents, but they don't acknowledge my son. When they call my husband or ask when he is going to visit, they only bring up his 10-year-old. His family acts like my husband cheated on his ex and had a baby with me. His ex cheated on him and left him for someone else. When the relationship did not work, she tried to get back with my husband. The past weekend my husband and I celebrated his 10-year-old's birthday. His parents were livid they weren't invited. His dad even threatened to cut him out of his will. My husband simply replied, "You should acknowledge both of my sons, not just one. I know my son is young now, but I don't want him to face rejection." He did not do anything to anyone. When my husband's grandparents came into town, we had planned the dinner a week in advance. When we arrived at my in-laws, his grandparents weren't there. My in-laws live over an hour away. My husband's grandparents chose to have dinner with my husband's ex-wife. My husband and I waited for over an hour and a half with our newborn. Mind you, he didn't like car rides at the time. His grandparents walked through the door as we were leaving and got upset. We stayed for half an hour then left. I do not like the treatment my son is receiving. I told my husband they could not come to my stepson's birthday party. Am I the jerk? Am I the antagonist for not inviting them to the party? I don't plan on being around my in-laws anytime soon for birthday holidays, etc. My husband's ex-wife works at a fast food chain and works about 5-6 days a week, 10-hour days. My husband's parents have him all the time on her week. My husband and I have good schedules as to where we can actually be there for him. His mom has no time for him at all, so my husband's parents have him all 2 weeks out of the month. His parents also celebrated his birthday during his mom's week. My son has been rejected since the day he was born. His dad did not see the baby until he was 2 months old and we had to go to him. So the birthday was the final straw. Why should my son have to face rejection? His parents can hate me, I don't care, but it's not fair to my son. Also, the day my son was born, his mom did not want to see him. She told my husband she would drive to the hospital so my husband can see his other son. It was my husband's week and we asked for her to keep him. There are several instances, but to name a few. My husband will not go for full custody because his parents will get the best lawyer in town for his ex. His parents are rich. My husband and I are not. So his parents do not like me because they cannot control me. My husband was a mama's boy. His parents wanted us to move into their home. I said no. His parents do have a very large house. I had my own home before I met my husband. My husband and his ex lived with his parents. His parents also spent more time with my husband when he was with his ex. She lived with them but would not be home because she preferred being with her sisters. My husband's dad also works out of state often and was never home at the time. At the time my husband took his dad's place in the home. As odd as it sounds, he helped cook. He helped with his 2 teen sisters. He helped his mom with her garden that she spends thousands on every year. My husband stayed with his parents while dating me and his ex moved out after he found out she cheated. His parents also criticized her, often saying she was not a good wife. She was never there, always with her family on her days off. So long story short, there is more to the story, but I can't write it all here. So if I have this right, your husband's ex cheated on him, then tried to come back when that relationship didn't work out, yet they treat you like the mistress and refuse to acknowledge your son. How in the hell do they justify that batshit line of reasoning? People who weaponize money and exclude a baby don't deserve an invite anywhere. Kudos to your husband for prioritizing his kids and having your back, which is the way it should be. I'm hurt about my husband not putting any thought into my Mother's Day gift. My husband and I have been together for 4 years and have a soon-to-be 1-year-old. For his first Father's Day, I was 3 months postpartum, baby glued to me at all times and very much in survival mode. Yet I planned ahead and custom made him 3 hardcover books with him and our son as the main characters, along with a full-page letter about how much we love him and what a great dad he is on every one of the books. I also got him some way overpriced artisanal beer and a book of dad jokes. He cried, said it was fantastic and that he's under pressure to do something equally as great for my first Mother's Day, which in my country of origin is tomorrow. I work fully from home and he works hybrid. Usually, he always works from home on Fridays, and for 3 days a week, we have a nanny for 3 hours a day so we can actually get some work done in between naps. This morning before he left for work, he told me to ask her to come in tomorrow, because otherwise he'll have no time to get me something for Mother's Day. That's right, he left it until the day of. I got upset but said nothing, and he assumed I was upset about him not working from home. After I gave birth, I told him I wanted a necklace with the moon my son was born under for a push present. He didn't get it, but I didn't mind, because when we got home from the hospital there were flowers, balloons, cake with a zero candle, all my favorite snacks, a teddy and a mug that said "World's Best Mom." About a month ago I casually mentioned the necklace again, but it seems it fell on deaf ears. It's not a money issue, and I'm not a materialistic person. It's a $40 necklace off Etsy, you guys. I'm tempted to buy it for myself after Mother's Day, because I want it and because I feel like being a little petty. He always says he can't help it if I'm a much better gift giver than him, that he can't compete. But the thing is, when he tries, he's an excellent gift giver too. I once told him that my grandfather, whom I adored, used to have a cuckoo clock that broke, and my biggest regret was not buying him a new one before he died. That Christmas he gave me the most beautiful and intricate cuckoo clock from Germany and said it could be our first family heirloom. Oftentimes, like for our 3-year anniversary, which was 1 week after the birth of our son, he gave me nothing and said he had no time. There was another birthday years ago where they got me a cookbook on cakes and a riveter. For those that don't know, a riveter is a tool, and I don't know what it's actually used for. The logic behind this was that I like Rosie the riveter. He's a clever man, so him going from Rosie to an actual tool is just baffling. It's just making me feel unloved and unimportant when he doesn't put any thought into things like this. Stop putting so much effort into his. If he can't do it for you, then do not do it for him. I think you should talk to him about the fact that he makes you feel unappreciated when he doesn't put thought or effort into getting you anything when you put so much effort into him. Either he's going to be receptive or he's not. How he reacts will tell you a lot about the relationship. If he's defensive, it's a lost cause because he doesn't act like he values you because he doesn't value you. Am I the antagonist for not giving my sister pocket money anymore? I have 2 way younger twin siblings, Ben 19 male and Zoe 19 female. They don't get along and are always fighting. It gets so bad that my mom once secretly told me she regrets having more children. She was joking, I think. I personally believe they're both equally at fault, and so does mom, but our dad dotes on Zoe a lot and believes Ben is just a stupid delinquent. For context, Zoe is more well-behaved than Ben, and she's currently in college doing a pretty tough program. I'm very proud of her, she worked hard for it. Ben really doesn't want to go back to school and shuts down every conversation related to it. He's also a painter artist and is always drawing or painting. I do think he's being slightly stubborn and should be thinking more about his future, not school necessarily, but ultimately, it's his choice. Still, he can't survive on little part-time jobs forever. Anyways, my parents invited my husband and I to dinner, and we said sure. When we got there, I could tell Ben and Zoe were fighting, but they didn't say anything. Until we were sat for dinner, and Zoe randomly announced that Ben got a girl pregnant. My dad went red and wouldn't even hear Ben out. It all happened so fast, but Dad basically went into Ben's room and threw all his art stuff out the window. He even took his guitar and has it locked somewhere in the basement. He also called Ben several names. I've literally never seen Ben cry like that. When Ben finally managed to speak, he clarified that it was just a scare. No girl is currently pregnant with his child. He's now locked himself in his room and hasn't even left to go to work, according to my mom. I'm so incredibly heartbroken for him. My dad doesn't give a shit that he misunderstood because a scare is just as bad to him. And Zoe doesn't feel an ounce of regret either. She said that everyone was saying it, and she only brought it up out of concern. She thinks he deserved to have his things destroyed because she thinks he lives in a fantasy land. Because of this, I have stopped giving my sister money. I gave her a lot of pocket money for her to spend on herself as a treat. I do the same with my brother. But I've stopped for her. My mom gets it, but my dad won't stop calling me to yell at me for playing favorites and punishing my sister for doing the right thing and rewarding my brother for being a bum. I told him I wasn't going to be speaking to him anymore, and he just told me he was disappointed. My husband thinks I should have talked it out some more, but I genuinely think they went too far this time. Some of the stuff my dad trashed were things Ben created almost 10 years ago, and the way Zoe smiled the whole time honestly creeped me out. Am I the asshole? It's clear that your sister is spoiled and malicious, while your dad is not a good parent for treating her like a princess, but throwing all of your brother's art stuff out of the window. The way they are treating your brother is disgraceful, and they need a reality check. Maybe your brother can stay with you while he gets things sorted out. Your sister and your dad need a wake-up call. Am I the antagonist for kicking my son's girlfriend out of my house for being lazy and rude? I, 42 years old female, lived with my husband of 7 months, Roland, 45-year-old male, and my son Silas, 20 years old male. My son had been seeing a girl named Louise, 19 years old female, for a little over a year. I only met her a handful of times. She grew up in foster care and lived in special supervised accommodations for young people who have aged out of the system. She also received some kind of settlement totaling a little over $100,000, so she at least had a little money to her name. The day before Roland and I got married, my son tells me that Louise decided to leave where she lived because she felt she lacked privacy due to frequent visits from the building supervisors. She'd been looking for an apartment for months, with no success as she's unemployed and most landlords in my city require proof of employment. She had already notified the folks at her transitory accommodations that she would be leaving, so she had nowhere to go once the deadline for her to leave arrived. He asked if she could come stay with us until she figured things out, which I agreed to without much thought as my mind was occupied with all the last-minute wedding preparations. 10 days later after the wedding, she moves in. We all agreed that this would be a temporary situation until Louise found her own place. We discussed what my house rules were. Treat everyone with respect and pick up after yourself. I also told Silas and Louise that if they hadn't found accommodations after 1 month, I would start charging them a bit of rent to cover the increased expense of having a new household member. For the first month that she was with us, she did no chores and would leave dirty dishes in the sink. My husband and I called a family meeting where we discussed how we would like chores to be split. She rejected all but one of the chores on the list, cleaning the bathroom, which she rarely did to the point where we just didn't bother asking her to do it anymore. Then for the disrespectful behavior, yelling, cursing, and screaming at me when I would confront her about undesirable behaviors, complaining that we made too much noise when getting ready for work in the morning, etc. After an argument in November, I told my son that she needed to be out of my house by March 1st. She just stayed in my son's room all day doing heaven knows what while he went to school and work. In mid-February, I reminded Silas that she was to be gone by March 1st. Then, February 29th rolls in. That morning as my husband was leaving for work, Louise screamed from my son's room yelling, "Oh my God, why does he have to be so loud?" When Silas came out of his room, I told him that she needed to leave. Things escalated and the cops got involved. She and my son are now gone. I reached out to my son so that we could talk, but it's been the silent treatment from him since. Am I the asshole? She was completely out of line. Unfortunately, you may just have to deal with the silent treatment from your son until he comes around. Trust me, he will come back. Hang in there, your son will probably get sick of having to care for a woman who won't work in or out of the house. You did the right thing to protect yourself and your husband, and went above and beyond to support your son in supporting his GF until she became unbearable. If you need proof, just reread what you wrote. You extended more hospitality than most and got crap thrown back in your face. Kudos to you for setting boundaries and sticking to them. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.